सुनो। Good evening, sir.
Hello. Hi.
Yes, sir.
So, who's the audience for this event? Aishwarya? Aishwarya, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Aishwarya, who is the audience for this event? Is it teachers or school?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a teachers.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir.
But you have sent it by email. I didn't see this in your social media handles. Of course, I had kept it in mind, but you have sent.
Sir, I shared you the clip.
No. I got it, ma. I got it, but I shared on my handles, but I didn't see it in the EduDev's handle on LinkedIn and Facebook because you have mailed it or something like that, or is it a separate crowd?
Sir, I'll check.
No, no problem. I'm just checking. No, I tagged EduDevs in both LinkedIn and in Facebook.
Oh, okay, sir. Even I also post on the morning for today's session.
Okay, okay. No, I didn't see it in the Facebook page. So I thought, anyway, I posted it day before yesterday, or yesterday, I think, on the Facebook page. I always tag edudevs also, so there is no problem. It might have come in your page in any case. I don't know.
So just going.
Devyani ma'am will join.
No, sir. Actually, she have a meeting, so she's busy.
Oh, अच्छा, ठीक है, ठीक है.
Good evening, all. Today, we have with us Dr. Prashant Nair, Vice Chairman, IQAC Associate Professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering from Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham University. He has over 20 years of teaching, mentoring, and academic administrator experience. So now I hand over the stage to Dr. Prashant Nair, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Just give me 1 minute.
Sure, sir.
Thank you, Aishwarya, for that introduction.
Thank you
A
so much.
very good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to this master class on computational thinking for NEP 2020 and STEM education, organized by EduDevs and Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, which is the #1 private university in India. And I will be trying to give you a kind of an overview on what is computational thinking and what to gain from computational thinking in terms of both educators as well as the students. So let me just start my slides. Is my slide visible? Can you just check, confirm, Aishwarya?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. So as I mentioned, computational thinking it has become a very important paradigm with respect to education. more so for schools as compared to higher educational institutions. So as was mentioned, I was introduced as a, computer science professor in Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham. I am at the Coimbatore campus of the university, which is ranked as the #1 private university in India. And we also have a big connect to the computational thinking bandwagon. The connect is that I was actually the vice chair of computer science department from 2007 to 2019. And I recall in the year 2014-15, we had introduced computational thinking as a compulsory course for all undergraduate engineering students. Now it's almost 7 to 8 years has passed, but we have had perhaps six or not six, but at least 3-4 batches of engineering graduates who have graduated with a first year course in computational thinking. And the interesting thing is that it is not only for the computer science and engineering graduates, it is for all engineers, whether you're a mechanical engineer, a civil engineer, an electronics engineer, electrical engineer, aerospace engineer, it doesn't matter. Computational thinking is extremely important in the 21st century workplace. The future workplace, it's a very important skill, so as to speak. So that is a big connect that we have had in terms of introducing computational thinking as a compulsory core course in the first year for all undergraduates in engineering in the Amrita University. I believe that number is like close to 2,000 per year across all campuses. So that is a connect that I have with computational thinking. And I'm very proud of the fact that I was heading the department at that point of time. And if I recall, perhaps we were the first or second university in India to have this compulsory course on computational thinking. I think IIIT Hyderabad had started with computational thinking a little ahead of us, but subsequently we were probably the second university or perhaps the first. It's arguable. I don't know the exact dates, so as to speak. So that is the experience with which we had this course. Now, why I say it is all the more relevant for schools, and the experience has taught us that yes, computational thinking is needed for all professionals, but it is always best to introduce this in the school education. That would be a better effective mechanism, especially when they go into the professional education and higher education. So let us see why. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we are having this masterclass seminar in the context of the new education policy. The new education policy, NEP 2020, is a game changer in the sense that it envisages a vision wherein Indian education system is the best by 2030, second to none, with at least 50% of all school-going children going into higher education and professional education. That's what we call a gross enrollment ratio. So the objective of this NEP or the National Education Policy is to ramp up the numbers of higher education such that we have 100% coverage. Every single child is in primary school, in secondary school, 100% coverage, GER in terms of primary and secondary school, and at least 50% of them after school, they move to higher education. No child is left out. Everybody is through primary and secondary education. The education is focused on technology, focused on skill development, vocational development, interdisciplinary connect. And the silos we create in terms of arts, humanities, sciences, engineering, all that is vanishing. There is seamless integration and so on and so forth. But I don't want to spend too much time on this. But having said that, the new educational policy is very much focusing on developing a curriculum that integrates 21st century skills computational thinking and scientific temper. And computational thinking is very much in the scheme of things. Now, there are many synonyms. If you ask me, my personal opinion is that computational thinking, algorithmic thinking, mathematical thinking, in many places you see several terms like that, computational thinking, mathematical thinking, algorithmic thinking, problem solving thinking, all this is the same, more or less. To a large extent, even critical thinking is very similar, because computational thinking talks about problem solving. How do you develop a mindset to solve problems? And what are the tools? You break down the problems to issues, you consider problems in an abstract fashion, you look for patterns, you look for logic and so on. That is the vision or the essence of computational thinking, which is the same as mathematical or algorithmic thinking. Algorithm means what? You're doing things in steps, one step at a time, right? Critical thinking is very similar. Perhaps I would think that critical thinking is a subset of the computational thinking paradigm, where critical thinking, you are focusing on facts and numbers, facts, figures, and data. And you analyze the data, the facts, figures, the data, you analyze that, you logically look at the facts, figures, and numbers, and then try to take decisions. So I would think critical thinking is perhaps a subset of the computational thinking. Now, today, another concept that has become very popular is the concept of design thinking. Design thinking is philosophically similar, but design thinking is a slightly different approach. The design thinking approach focuses on the stakeholder. Who is the user of your technology? If you are taking a class for a university, then the stakeholders are obviously the students. If you are taking a class for a school, the school children are the stakeholders. So design thinking is you empathize with the stakeholders, understand what they want, use technology tools to ascertain what they want, and build a solution customized to the needs of the stakeholder. That is design thinking. So it's very important that I tell you this subtle difference between computational thinking, critical thinking, and design thinking. Computational thinking is problem solving. We will come to that a little later. Critical thinking is a subset of computational thinking, focusing on analyzing the data, the evidence, the information, and from that information, you analyze and take decisions. That is critical thinking. It's a subset of computational thinking. Design thinking is an approach. It is more of a management approach, a management philosophy, where you empathize with the stakeholder, understand what the stakeholder wants, and based on the input, empathy with the stakeholder, you come up with a solution that is customized and tailored towards the stakeholder. That is design thinking. Of course, design thinking also is a different approach, but design thinking is also very good in terms of problem solving technique. So you can even say design thinking is probably something like a diversion. It could be a subset of computational thinking, but it's a little different approach. That's all. The methodology is slightly different. So we have seen all these issues with respect to the NEP. I told you the NEP 100%. We want all children to go to school in primary and secondary levels. 100% coverage. Preschool, secondary school, primary school, and out of that 100%, at least 50% we want them to go for higher education, anything, any education, arts, humanities, engineering, medical, pharmacy, dental, nano, bio, whatever be the case, they go for higher education, 50% of them. And the idea is around 2030, That is the expectation. But having said that, NEP talks about a lot of interdisciplinary, vocational skills, experiential learning. All these things are being taught. So now let us go to the major, the topic of today's agenda. See, to be very honest, for quite some time, over the last 15 years, people have been talking about this. Computational thinking, problem solving, being a fundamental skill which will be needed by everybody and anybody. And computational thinking should be as important as reading, writing, doing simple mathematics, arithmetic, algebra. And the idea is, how do you think like a computer scientist? How do you analyze a problem? How does a computer behave? How does a computer behave? How does a computer address the solutions, address a problem, work towards the figure out the solution? How do you do that? Same kind of approach, same kind of thinking. How can you bring? And for that, what would be needed? Computational thinking is a thought process involved. This is the basic definition of the computational thinking. A thought process involved in formulating problems and their solutions so that the problems are represented in a form that can be effectively carried out by an information processing agent. So the key words here are, one is problem solving, an approach towards problem solving. Second thing is that you're representing the solution, the actions, the thing in a way that an information processing agent is nothing but an intelligent device with a processor. It can be your mobile phone, it can be a computer, it can be your iPad. The way the computer processes information, the way the computer does repetitive tasks, that also you bring into this equation. So the first aspect is the problem solving. The second thing is the efficiency, the speed with the logic, the rationale, the structured, disciplined approach with which a computer analyzes, implements, and executes. That is the catch with respect to computational thinking. Now, this pretty much is the best slide, the most high value slide in my presentation. What constitutes computational thinking? Essentially, four major building blocks are there. Four major actions or four major modules are there with respect to the computational thinking paradigm. Number one, abstraction. Abstraction means you remove parts of a problem that are unnecessary, that are not needed. You separate those details and use solutions across for different problems. We'll come to each of them in detail. Decomposition, I can simply explain as British philosophy. You have heard about divide and conquer. Of course, that was a very bad strategy used, and the British were enslaving India for over more than a century. Almost a couple of centuries they enslaved India using the concept of divide and conquer. Same divide and conquer concept we can use for problem solving. You break down problems into smaller chunks, manageable chunks, and try to address them. Pattern recognition, look for patterns. Pattern is an opposite of chaos. Something that is in order, something that has got some sense, something that has got some symmetry. Look for those patterns. And finally, algorithm design. Step by step, you try to address the problem as also address the solution. At one level, decomposition is breaking the problem. You're breaking the problem into manageable parts, chunks, manageable chunks. Algorithm is breaking the solution into step by step. Now let us see each of these major building blocks, so as to speak, with respect to computational thinking. Abstraction. Abstraction means you have some entity. The entity have these different features, different details. The idea of abstraction is you only pull the important details. Certain things you need not say, certain things you can say, certain things you can hide, depending upon the requirement. Right? So abstraction is pulling the important details, identifying principles that apply to problems and solutions, and modeling them in such a way that they are clearly understandable. Now I will give you an example. You want to go from home to a hotel. You don't know the way to go, or maybe you know the way to go. How will you describe that journey from your house to that restaurant? Say you want to go to a McDonald's, home to McDonald's. You can do it in one step. Take your phone, your smartphone, go into Google Maps or GPS and give McDonald's, Chanakyapuri, whatever, wherever you are. Automatically, you will get the direction in one step. The same thing you can also do into a two-step. From your home, you can walk 500 meters, go to RK Puram bus stand, take a bus number 4, and it will drop you at Chanakyapuri, KFC. McDonald's. 2 steps. You can also do third step. You can walk to the auto stand from your home, take an auto, or take an auto, go to the metro, RK Puram metro. I don't know where the metro goes. From the RK Puram metro, you go to the metro that is nearest to the McDonald's in Chanakyapuri. Get down, again take an auto, go to the McDonald's. 5 steps or 6 steps, route by route. You can even say, auto driver, turn right on X road, turn left on Y road. So the same thing, there are different levels of abstraction. In 1 step, you can do the thing. In 2 steps, you can do the thing. In 5 steps also you do. But it depends upon the situation. Sometimes you need to do it in 5 steps. Sometimes you need to do it depending upon the situation. You can apply different levels of abstraction. Decomposition. Divide and conquer. Divide and rule. Problem is divided into smaller chunks, smaller elements, smaller tasks. Each task is very simple, easy to manage. Now, that's not over. This is also repeatable. So you have a problem, you have broken down to task 0, task 1, task 2, task 3. Sometimes task 4 is only a repeat of task 0. It is repeatable. So you don't have to do task 4. Task 4 is second time you do task 0. This is one level of abstraction. I'm trying to give you the idea of computational, to introduce the idea. You have a problem, a major problem is there. You have broken down the problem into chunks, task 0, task 1, task 2, task 3. Okay. Each task is separate. Each task has a solution. Each task you have defined. Now, task 4 is identical to task 0. You don't have to define task 4. You can repeat task 0 2 times. That will take care of the next task. So this is the idea behind decomposition. When you write programs, right, the same thing is represented in terms of modules. When you write programs, you write modules. One module is one package, one entity or sub-entity. Another module is another entity. The same logic is extrapolated into your programming when you break down things into tasks, and the task can be repeatable. Yeah. So this is a good example of that. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. What is the best way to serve 20 pizzas to 60 hungry students? How do you minimize the time for everybody to get the pizza? And unfortunately, I showed you the answer. Anyways, simplest option, and what normally 9 out of 10 people will do is that everybody will sit in a table, and then 60 hungry children will sit in the table, and 20 pizzas will be there. There will be chaos. One pizza, somebody will get part bigger piece, somebody will get smaller piece. All that confusion, hangama will go on. The other solutions are much more better. 5 tables with 4 pizzas each. In one table, 5 tables are there, 60 students are there, 12 students can sit in one table, each will have 4 pizzas. Simple, much easier to manage. This is the idea of decomposition. Another way is people stay put and pizzas are passed around. That again is chaos. Another slightly better solution is 4 servers can bring the pizza. The server has to be very carefully giving the pizza. He should, if all of them are sitting, okay, this pizza is for you people. This pizza is for 2, 3 of you, 4 of you, like that. The server or the bearer or the waiter in the restaurant has to properly administer. So there's a big dependency. So unfortunately, the most common thing that people do is all of them will sit in one table and will be chaos. And if you ask me, the best solution is the second solution. But please understand, the second solution, where 5 tables with 4 pizzas and 60 students, is a good solution. But suppose you don't have the space, you are not in a position to have 5 tables, then you go to the next solution or the next solution. You have only one table, you have nothing else to do. So then your constraint is you have 4 servers. You need to have 4 servers. Otherwise, it will be messed up. If you don't have 4 servers, then the third solution is the only way. So what I'm trying to tell you is that when you're talking of computational thinking, you're looking for solutions. You may or may not be looking at the best solution. Ideally, it is ideal to take the best solution. But sometimes you may not be. You may have to go for an optimized solution. If you don't have, see, in this situation, 20 pizzas you are serving to 60 students. The best way is to have 4 tables with 5 pizzas each. 5 tables with 4 pizzas each and 12 students per table, ideally. But if you don't have 4 tables, 5 tables, what will you do? So these are the constraints. Then you go to the next best solution. That is the concept of optimized solution. An optimized solution is one that fits your circumstances to the best possible extent. It need not be the best solution. Our best solution is different, but optimized is you have some constraints. You have some dependencies. Based on that, you are arriving at the best possible solution. Then, of course, logical thinking, like a computer thinks. You have numbers. This is where I connect to the critical thinking. You have numbers, you have facts, you have figures, you have data, and now you analyze the data. You look at the data, you organize the data, you so break the problem into understandable concepts, and then try to apply your logic to it. Apply a rule-based system. Like, so just to give you a simple example, all humans are mortal. Socrates is human. So it is implied from the logic. I'll again repeat. All humans are mortal. Mortal means one day they are going to die. Socrates is human. So it implies that Socrates is also a mortal. Socrates will also die. Of course, he did die. But what I'm saying is, it is logic. You're looking at logic. Some logic is there. There is some underlying logic. All students are mortal. Socrates is human. So Socrates is also a mortal. It's a simple logic. Now I will give you a brain twister. This is a very take a minute and read through this. It's a little confusing, but I will take a minute and look into it, and then I will tell you why we have implied that. How to look for the solution. It's a little complicated. Please go through it. Take a second, take a minute. Okay. So it's a little brain twister. If Paul is thin, Carlo is not gray-haired, and Robert is not tall. If Robert is tall, Chandra is lovely. Now, how do you analyze this? Paul is thin, then Carlo is not gray-haired, and Robert is not tall. If Robert is tall, then Chandra is lovely. If Chandra is lovely and Carlo is gray-haired, then only Paul is thin. And finally, Carlo is gray-haired. Very confusing, I know, I agree with you. But the trick is very simple. Look for an association between the first statement and the second statement. Paul is thin, then Carlo is not gray-haired or Robert is not tall. Now, look, what is the second statement? Robert is tall, then Chandra is lovely. So, what will Chandra's state be in the first thing? Paul is thin, Carlo is not gray-haired, Robert is not tall. Then, when Robert is tall, only Chandra is lovely. That means when Robert is not tall, Chandra is not lovely, is ugly. This is how you build a association between the first statement and the second statement. Then there is a third statement. So what you are looking is, see, this is what I'm looking for, a pattern. I'm actually telling you pattern recognition. Paul is thin, Carlo is not gray-haired, Robert is not tall. Second statement, Robert is tall, Chandra is lovely. What is the commonality? Robert is the pattern that is common. So in the first statement, Robert is not tall. Second, Robert is tall. If Robert is tall, Chandra is lovely. If Robert is not tall, Chandra is not lovely. Now you take Chandra and put it into the first statement. If Paul is thin, Carlo is not gray-haired, Robert is not tall, and Chandra is not lovely. This is how you look for patterns. You break a problem into chunks. You look for patterns, you try to associate them, and then you arrive at the solution. And finally, the solution is, that we can infer from here is Robert is not tall, based on the data. That means Paul is thin, Carlo is not gray-haired, Chandra is not lovely, and so on. That is from you are inferring from that statement. So this is logical thinking. So we saw abstraction. Abstraction means you are only pulling important details. You can do things one step or two steps at a time. You break the problem into small chunks, small understandable chunks, decompose the problem. You think logically, you look for associations, you look for patterns, common patterns. So see how the patterns are coming up. I'll again give you the same. Blue pentagon, red triangle, green triangle, blue rectangle, green rectangle, blue circle, red square, red rectangle, green square, blue square. Patterns. One by one, you are looking at patterns. Now you know the patterns, you can isolate them. You can, I'm sure you heard about machine learning, right? Machine learning, artificial intelligence. What does it do? It looks for patterns and groups the patterns together. It classifies the patterns. The same thing. I'll tell you what machine learning is. You take all the blue circles and keep the blue circles in one place. You take all the green squares and put the green squares in another place. You take all the green rectangles and keep it separately. This is the logic of machine learning, supervised learning, unsupervised learning. If you know that it is a green blue circle, you find all the blue circles. If you don't know, you figure it out. When you know it is a blue circle, that is classification. You know that this is a blue circle, then you take all the blue circles and combine them. That is classification, supervised learning, machine learning. Now, you don't know what is blue circle, you don't know what is green circle, you don't know what is red square. Then there is so much of data. Then you figure out, okay, you understand, okay, this is a blue circle. This looks like a blue circle. Let us take all these together things and keep it together. That is clustering. Just to give you the idea behind how this leads towards machine learning and thereby to artificial intelligence. So pattern is the opposite of chaos. You are looking for some sort of order, some sort of symmetry, some sort of pattern, and you are trying to classify them as per you. Every day we are doing Google Pay. Google Pay, you go to a shop, just take your iPhone, take an image of that. You get the Google Pay. It asks you pay. It's a pattern. That QR code is a pattern. You scan a QR code, it goes to a website or it goes to a payment gateway. That is nothing but a pattern. So all these are examples. These are the building blocks. So again, the building blocks of computational thinking are decomposition, breaking down issues into problems into smaller chunks, pattern recognition, looking for patterns, looking for similarities, symmetry, abstraction, only taking the important details, logical thinking, and algorithmic design. Approach the solution step by step. That is what we are going to see next. Yeah. So pattern recognition, I already told you so many things are there. So many applications are there. If you take your social media, I have friends, you have friends. I am your friend, you're my friend. It's quite likely that many of my friends are your friends also. Simple logic. You can build a tree, a graph, a node of friends, and you can even find associations. You will find associations. See, if you just take my LinkedIn profile, you take my Facebook profile, it's very easy to cluster. One will be my past students. One will be my colleagues. One will be outside Amrita university acquaintances, friends, colleagues, and so on. One will be other associations. I'm into so many professional bodies. There is a big group of Computer Society of India friends, a big group of Atal Innovation Mission. I'm involved in a voluntary capacity, a big chunk of hackathon friends, people who are into the hackathons and stuff. So it's very easy to look for patterns, look for connections, look for this thing, and that is what happens in the computational thinking. Then of course algorithms. See, decomposition is breaking the problem into chunks. Algorithm is breaking the solution into steps, chunks. So let us take a simple example. In mathematics, you know about this, excuse me. You know about this GCD of two numbers, Euclid's algorithm. Very simple logic. Function GCD AB, while A is not equal to B, and if A is greater than B, then A is equal to A minus B. No, it's not A equal to. It's I forgot what is that symbol. I forgot. Anyway, see the step by step. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. You have broken down the solution into steps, one step at a time, right? So that is the idea of an algorithm, and the flow chart is nothing but a flow chart. The same thing that you want to do, you have now explained in terms of a pictorial description. Same thing, input A, B. If B equal to 0, yes, then you directly print A as the GCD. If B is not equal to 0, then A is greater than B, it checks, oh, it is B is equal to B minus A. So that is the meaning of that. I forgot that actually, I'm sorry. So this is the flow chart for doing a simple example of a GCD for two numbers. Right? So it's the idea is to break the solution also into steps or into manageable steps. Now, some simple things with which I will finally go into the. I think I'm running short of time, but I'll go into the applications of computational thinking quickly and answer your questions. Debugging. You are trying to remove errors step by step. You have an algorithm. You have made an algorithm. You have written an algorithm. You have decided the solution step by step, but in that process you may make errors, and those errors, unearthing those errors, fixing those bugs, this is the idea of debugging. Now let us take this example. Switch 1, switch is case, it's a case. If this is 1, it goes here. If this is 2, it goes here. If it is 3, it goes here. 4 means it goes here. See, there is an error here. I think you are doing a cut paste job. So you cut pasted here and changed it to 2. Again you cut pasted, you forgot to change it to 3. Here you cut pasted, you changed it to 4. So it's a simple bug or an error. And because of that, the program didn't work, because you are cutting and pasting. That's why. So debugging is also needed, where any algorithm or any programming language syntax, you are checking step by step and finding out if there are errors and bugs. Okay, now coming to the why computational thinking, I have already told you it's very important, not only for college education. If you ask me, it's very important for all kind of students. And ideally, the NEP, the National Education Policy, feels that this problem solving paradigm, this computational thinking, which includes critical thinking, should be taught in the school, so that that mindset of approaching problems is changed. And not only that, when your approach to solve problems changes, you can focus on more complicated, complex problems, which may be interdisciplinary in nature. So that is why the concept is start this in the schools. And there's a very good business case for that. Colleges, we have seen last 3-4 batches, all students are reporting better problem solving skills because they developed this thing in the first year of engineering. We are seeing that, and I'm sure this will be carried forward when you go into the higher classes also. Now, some simple examples, looking up a name in an alphabetically sorted list. If you are following a linear approach, you go from A, B, C, D from start. But if you are going for a binary search, the logic tells you don't start from the start, but you start from the center. See, that's a different perspective that is brought in. Don't start from start or end, but start from the middle. It's a different kind of approach. You are standing in a bank. All of us go to shops, banks. You'll see that it's a mess, right? One fellow will only do loans. Half the time he is simply sitting. Nobody is coming for a loan. One fellow is dispensing cash as a teller. He's extremely busy. One fellow is only checking annual checks. He's filing checks. It's a very, what should I say, inefficient way of doing things. Cashier will do only cashier's job. Teller will only do teller's job. Loan officer will only do loan job. That's a very inefficient way. Everybody should be able to do everything. Right? Make them general purpose. Schedule the task in such a way that everybody is equally involved. Performance analysis, task scheduling. So everybody is a loan officer who is coming for a loan. One fellow per day will come for a loan. 100 people are coming for cash. So you have tasks in such a way, reorganize the task in such a way that everybody's got balanced load. And that is needed for supermarket, bank, customs, immigration, everywhere this is needed. Right? You have to do things in parallel. You're making a gourmet meal. Obviously, you need to cut the vegetables ahead of schedule. If you start putting the meat into the, I don't know, cooker or something and start cutting vegetables, the meat will be ready, but the vegetables are still being cut. You should have done that earlier. So these are the kinds of things that we need: the computational thinking, we need the pattern recognition, we need the decomposition, we need the abstraction, we need the logical thinking to analyze. So I will probably get into the, I think there are many examples, but I will probably stop with this and answer your, give you some perspectives. I think there are a lot of questions also. So yeah, maybe another 5 minutes I'll take and leave it. So this is a very interesting example. There is a bee. This bee wants to go to the flower, but the bee cannot fly over a red barrier, right? So the bee cannot go left and jump up. It cannot do that. Either it should go straight, come like this and go to the bee, or it should go like this and go like this to the bee. I'll try to show you with the pointer. Either the bee has to go like this, or the bee has to go like this. This is the only way that the bee can go. And which is the sequence of steps? Is it the first one? It goes up, 1, 2, 3, left. The first one is the answer, right? It will go like this. Otherwise, let me see the other steps. Oh, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1. Ah, it's correct. It's correct. It's correct. This is the first step. Let us take the second one. The second one, let us take. Go left, left, left. Then go up. It's not allowed to do. So this is not possible. So like this is how you try to. This is how you try to solve tasks. Trial and error. Go by this thing. Yeah, I'll probably close with this data structure. So when you're all using computer programs, we need to organize data into data structures. Examples are stacks and queues. I'll give you an example of a stack and queue. This is a queue. This is a stack. Okay. This is a queue. This is a queue. This is a stack. Now, what it says is that a small beaver will be given green bowls, and a large beaver will be given brown bowls or red bowls. So that is the logic. Now, you have to map this queue to this stack. So here, first one is big, so it's fine. Too small, fine. Then big, brown, fine. Like that, you have to do a mapping. So you are mapping a queue to a stack. Big beaver means brown. Small beaver means green. So you have 4 patterns, and which is the answer? The answer is B. This is the correct this thing. Big beaver, green. Big beaver. No. Sorry. Small beaver, green. Small beaver, green. Big beaver, brown. Big beaver, brown. Small beaver, this thing like that. You have to solve the problem. Because of the screen, no, because of the grid, I am not able to see the screen properly, as I'm sure. Okay, so this is the concept in terms of the all this I have explained. Computational thinking is needed in all fields. You need problem solving paradigms. You need algorithmic thinking. You need this kind of logical thinking, decomposition, all applications, whether it is DNA sequencing, proteomics, bioinformatics, brain science, analyzing the brain data, the MRI scans, chemistry, understanding chemical reactions, chemical formulations, pharmaceutical formulations, understanding the structure of those things, modeling the Earth's surface, the geographical surface, the topologies, the topographies, the those kind of things. We use computational thinking. Astronomy, making calculations of stars which are light years away, mathematics, engineering, manufacturing, everywhere and anywhere we are seeing medicine, uh, humanities, books, analyzing books, classifying books, law, everywhere and anywhere, movies, we are having applications of computational thinking. So with this, I close. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope I was able to at least give you some demystify the concept of computational thinking and understand what it is. It is very simple. It is as simple as that, but this is the basis for many things. Thank you very much. Over to you for the questions. Thank you. Yeah, Aishwarya.
Yeah, yes, sir. Dear participants, if you have any questions, please free to ask.
So you had sent me some email, no? Maybe you can read those questions. Aishwarya?
Yes, sir. I'm checking. How to spread awareness about cyber security to kids using a posting way?
It's an unrelated question, but I will answer. See, cybersecurity. In one of the earlier events of EduDevs, I had told that it is very important to have digital citizenship in the curriculum, in the school curriculum. It need not be a subject, but it should be a some sort of digital citizenship, a small course, maybe a few hour course or a certification is very much needed, not only for college students and university students, but for school children also, because safety on the net. See, we have to understand that the whole world is behind. The internet has changed our life, right? The entire life has been changed by the internet, by the social media, and so on. We cannot live divorced from these technologies or initiatives. So what do? The only thing we can do is we have to learn to adjust, right? If I recall, Devyani ma'am was always asking me to repeat this. Largest media company in the world is Facebook. It's not Fox or American Online or Universal Studios. The largest media company in the world, or Star or anything, it is Facebook, because there are 2.85 billion monthly users of Facebook. Imagine, almost 3 billion people are on Facebook. And Facebook does not create the content. You and me are putting the content. I am putting my video, my talks, my photograph, my relationship status, anything and everything. So you cannot ignore these things. You cannot live divorced from these things. So it requires everybody to have some digital citizenship training. It can be a small module. I believe that CBSE has already started this initiative of digital citizenship, because I am in a higher education. I know we have given inputs for these kind of courses for schools, but I don't know what is the plan of CBSE. But I believe that they have already started toying with an idea of a digital citizenship course for all children across the board. And I feel that it should be done very, very fast. It should be done as early as possible. Yeah. Yeah, any more questions, Ma? Another question is it possible to develop computational skills to all? Yes, absolutely. There are simple tools that can help us to develop these kind of skills. In college, what we have done is we have used, there are some tools called Scratch, Raptor. There are some simple tools that can be used by anybody to develop their computational skills. Ideally, excuse me, ideally these things should be done in school itself. There are simple tools. I'll put those names of those tools after I just put this. See, to connect with me, I have given my email ID on the chat. Of course, EduDevs has got they are our partners, so they also have my coordinates and my information. But you can easily search for me. This is my name on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. It's easy to find me on all the three. But there are the tools that people can use are for this thing, Raptor, Scratch. These are some of the tools that we can develop for computational skills, Raptor and Scratch. Scratch is actually given by MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology has developed the Scratch software. Okay, other question is NEP related to computer science. Yeah, that is what this computational thinking. Computational thinking is an offshoot of computer science, where you're talking about concepts related to programs, programming languages, logic, algorithms, abstraction, decomposition. So, see, we have to also understand that, computer science is an enabler. Artificial intelligence is an enabler. We have to always understand that, see, computer science and these things are enablers of technologies. People talk of AI plus X. AI, as you know, is artificial intelligence. X is anything. X can be philosophy. X can be law. X can be Indian culture. X can be sensor. X can be anything. So artificial intelligence, computer science is an enabler for anything and everything. That's how we have to understand. So obviously the NEP, when you develop computational skills, that computational skills are the foundation is computer science, and it will percolate to everybody and anybody. Yeah, any more questions? How can we make study with joy? So that's a kind of a rhetorical question. See, I am of the opinion. I mean, this is again my personal opinion that unless you are unless you're passionate about it, it becomes life. If you're passionate about it, it becomes it becomes a celebration, right? So normally study can be a joy only if you're passionate about it, because you see, you know that what the end goal is, you know the heights that you can, once you study, you know where you can reach. That is one motivation. Second thing is that, you know, we can have a lot of tools that make learning interesting, experiential tools, practical tools, rather than, you know, just reading books or memorizing or cramming and stuffing and memorizing. All that is very uninspiring. Definitely we can make study joyful by having more of problem solving techniques, project based learning, problem based learning, experiential learning, field work. All these things make it a little more interesting, you know. But then see that let me also tell you, to make study with joy, to make it, it is the onus is very much on the teacher. I have to be very, very honest about it. See, if I have to, as a teacher, it is very important that I make my students understand. And as a teacher, I have to be a facilitator and an enabler of learning. I have to be prudent enough to use the best tools and techniques. I have to be adaptable enough to be able to make changes in my style of teaching approach. I have to be not a more of an enabler of learning. That the teacher has to evolve. Only then study can become joyful. So the responsibility of the teacher is very, very high. How can we, Jyoti is asking, how can we deliver the content precisely? See, I'll tell you what I do, right? I believe in transparency, and when I am taking a class for the, I'm talking in the context of university education. When I am allotted a subject, right, I start preparing. If it's a new course, a new subject, I prepare 3 months ahead of schedule. I make a very efficient course plan, session by session. If there are 45 sessions in a semester, every session, what topic has to be done? What is the milestone? After 15 sessions, there is going to be a periodical exam. The next 15 sessions later, there's going to be a periodical exam. The next 15 sessions later, there is going to be an end semester exam. The students know what content is going to be delivered for every class. 45 classes. What is the syllabus for the first periodical exam, second periodical exam, third periodical exam? Number one, that milestones is there, that course plan is there, number one. Number two, whatever content is there, I believe in giving it very clearly. If there is a textbook, it is prescribed without any copyright violation. I ensure that it is scanned, the PDF is kept in the common class area so that the student can use it, access it from the mobile phone. He's traveling from university to their hometown, they can read it in the bus. So the content for every lecture is clearly defined, and those things are available in soft copy. Yes, there is a copyright issue. See, there is a textbook, you know, as long as it is meant for classroom use, it is fine. You can scan it, make it into a PDF. The only thing you shouldn't do commercial distribution, right? So those kind of things. So the content is very clearly told. All the course material, the slides, the textbook, everything is available with the student. Then now now the onus is on the student to study. That I cannot do anything about it. I have given everything. The content is clear. Every session, what to study, what not to, what to prepare, what are the assignments, what are the milestones, what are the expectations. Everything is transparent. Once this transparency comes, I think there will be no problem. Okay, Aishwarya, any more questions?
No, sir. Not now. Thank you so much for this wonderful session, sir. I think all clear for the participation.
Yeah, thank you, Aishwarya, thank you, EduDevs. All the best to all the participants, all the my contact details, everything is available with EduDevs. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best. See you. Today is Ugadi in South India.
Yes, sir.
So happy Ugadi to all of you. We had our campus is in Tamil Nadu in Coimbatore, but there's a very big Telugu population. So I just came from a very sumptuous Ugadi lunch, which was hosted by the students. So I was a little tired also actually. Anyways, all the best. Happy Ugadi. Good evening. Stay safe. Bye.
You too, sir. Thank you, sir. Good
Bye-bye.
evening, sir.